But it can go a different way as well, Liz. You know, we have the Western astrology has really, from what I have experienced, you know, I haven't studied astrology for years. I've used it pretty much my whole life, but I don't have the knowledge that David and others have. But Gemini is seen in the Western world as this fun-loving, flitting, you know, this kind of yay sign. Same as Leo. Leo is the pride. You know, look at me. And so some people, they believe that they are this Leo. For example, Lionsgate 8/8, on that day, the sun is actually in Cancer. And so they're like, oh, I'm this Leo. And then they do a 13 sign astrology reading, or they get their chart and it turns out that their sun is actually in Cancer. They don't want to know it because Leo is way better than Cancer. But
Yep.
what's actually happening is that they are denying part of their destiny, because if they would truly step into that Cancer energy, they might get that family that they always yearned. You know, Cancer is that family orientation, the home sign of the moon, or, you know, Gemini, that flitting, and it's the fun-loving. But if they would actually realize that they were a Taurus, they might get that house that they always wanted, those earthly possessions that they actually deep down crave. But it's way more fun to be the Gemini. So it can go both ways, even though you think you are settled into that energy, that because of what you think that energy is, you could very much be denying your true destiny for this lifetime by not embracing what
I like
is.
that.
Because if you use your apps, there are so many apps now on that you look at the sky and you can clearly see that the sun right now is in Pisces, you know, and it so often happens that you look and the sun is in this, and all you have to do is just hold your phone and you're like, no, the sun is not there. The sun is in something else. And it's a crime.
Oh, yeah. You know what? I'm also hearing, I do mindset work and I help people feel better with the coaching and stuff that I do in the mindset work. And I would say too, that I can see that you think you're a Leo because it's a sexy sign, but you feel like you're not matching up to Leo. You can feel a sense of disappointment in yourself, and it could cause personal harm. Like, I'm not the Leo I'm supposed to be, or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. Well, that's great. The next question I would have is, you've kind of been addressing it, but you've kind of said it, but is there anything you want to add to this concept of why is this good for us to move? You pretty much said it, but anything else you want to add to why 13 sign? Why is it good for us? You've kind of said it, but anything else, any other ideas you want to add to it, to making that switch?
Yeah, look, we're going to have different perspectives on this, but that's okay as well. So from I'm kind of a big picture guy, and, you know, or person. That's my personality. I like to see the big picture and then the small. So some people like the detail, and they'll go from the detail and they'll sort of work their way up to a big picture, whereas others will start with a big picture and will come down into the detail. And you talk about mindset, Liz, you know, that's what they call inductive and deductive, you know, learning, or you can deduct something, you can reduce it down, or you can build it up to get an understanding or a picture. And so from that basis, and as you know, and building on what I said before about the roots of the Western system that we're living in, what many of us call the matrix system, which actually is not a thing in the East, and that's a whole different topic which we'll get to in a bit. But if we accept that those of us in the West are living in a system that was created from predominantly a left brain paradigm, a scientific paradigm, a white coat paradigm, that everything needs to be proven and mathematical and clinical and statistical. That is the world that we live in. It's everywhere. You know, the decisions that are made across any subject you can care to name pretty much will come back to statistics, data, left hand, where's the proof, right? So I believe, or we believe, that system, part of the re-emergence of the divine feminine energy, is to disrupt that. My take on the whole idea of the age of Pisces, which is the patriarchal, top-down, masculine rule, man at the top. It's the pyramid. We all understand that, where there's a few people making the decisions for the many. That's a patriarchal system. We see that. I'll say some things which will be controversial, but we see that in the church. We see that in the CEO running a big business. We see that in a government or a politician or a head of state. We see that whole ideology of a top-down patriarchal, what many call the age of Pisces. We see it everywhere. We see it manifest in systems. We see it manifest in structures. We see it manifest anywhere you care to look. Pretty much will be about the expert or the man. Usually it's a man. But then if we accept that system in the age of Aquarius is coming to an end, and this is going to be multiple generations of a transition from one system to the next. If we accept that system is beginning to crumble, and part of that means that you're moving out of a left brain modality, a predominant focus on the left brain, everything needs to be proven, everything needs to be boiled down to a fact, a factoid, for example, as opposed to the age of Aquarius, which is much more collaborative. It's much more right brain. It's much more intuitive. You're actually engaging a different aspect of our reality. So for us, part of the manifestation of the collapse of the system, in this case, astrological system, part of that is the emergence of this 13th sign, which has always been there. There's no question, as I said before, the sun spends time in Ophiuchus. That is not a debate. That is a fact. So the reality of whether we choose to cast a chart that would help us interpret, if I've got my moon or my Saturn or my sun or my rising sign or whatever, my south node, whatever it is sitting in Ophiuchus, why would I not want to experience that energy in my life? And that's been my premise for exploring it, and ultimately setting up starkittensmedia, which is in its very early stages. But we've cast many charts and done readings, and just to build on what we were saying before about people making things fit, I've got two very close, well, no, in fact, three close female friends that I've done charts for, and two of them, one of them is actually a Cancer sun, but she believes that she is a Leo, and she is yearning to be a mother, and yet she's full on investing in, she loves astrology, but she's absolutely investing in the Leo energy. So what's happening is that she's sending what I would consider a vibrational ripple into the field that's actually working against what we would call her divine design. So the premise being that as higher self, you don't have to accept this, but we accept that as higher self on the other side, before we came in, we sat there and I want to come in as this, or I want to come into that family, or I want to come into that genetic line, or I want to experience this, that, or the next thing. And we have that choice. That's what we believe. Now, whether that is true or not for others, it doesn't matter. It's true for me, and it's true for Sana. So if we accept that we chose a particular time, place, spot on the world, on this earthly structure, which then generates this chart, if we are playing a role in this case, it's just so much fun to be the creative Leo, but yet deep down, I want to be a mum, and yet there's these divergent energies going out. There's a dissonant and a resonant energy. And when you come back to this idea of quantum manifestation, which we also believe in, is that you've got to have coherence. So the why of the 13 chart is that it's not going to fit. It's going to intuitively fit for some, and for others, they'll have an absolute meltdown. Their brain will just go, no, I don't want to know. And you talk about the mindset. Well, remember that I had that meltdown. Yeah, I had to go through that process of undoing 25 to 30 years of knowledge. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is I can either just have a complete breakdown because I thought I was right about all of this stuff, or I can be open to accepting that actually my path is different and this is much more resonant. And I can say absolutely 100% that since I embraced that Ophiuchus moon energy, that Libra sun energy, and that Taurus rising energy, my life took a fantastic turn up in every way that I can possibly imagine. Physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, opportunities in the business, everything shifted. But it took a shift in mindset. But that mindset came back to understanding that on a macro, the big picture is that the whole Western world is dealing with this right now. There are questions being asked about all sorts of belief structures that are the basis of what we consider our reality, quantum creation and quantum physics being the latest. We're going from a 0 and 1s computer world, which we've had since the 50s and 60s, to a quantum computing system. Well, that alone is causing all sorts of problems in the field for people. They just can't, we're seeing everywhere, and it's not the time or the place to go into this, but you know what I mean. It's like,
Yes.
this in what we experience individually, in my opinion, is actually a reflection of what's going on in the big picture in the field. So as I had to come up and confront these belief structures, which is actually in astrology, the beliefs are along the Gemini Sagittarius polarity, right? And there's a whole piece there, but the beliefs that we have established in childhood, because we were influenced by our peers, by television or media, as modern kids are today, by our parents, whatever, that is all to do with the third house of Gemini. And that's why we call it the house of communication and content. That content that we build our beliefs on actually goes back to childhood. So when we come up to these points in our life, as I did, and as Sana has experienced with her mother and so on, there's a point where you're jutting up against your beliefs. And astrology gives you some sort of way of interpreting that and saying, actually, what happened in how does my third house look? Because my third house is to do with all those experiences I had as a child of where I learned to communicate and I developed the content, in other words, that builds my beliefs. So you have to almost go back to that third house and say, well, hey, hang on, there's always a lot going on in there, even if it's an empty house. The reality is that this idea of why 13 sign is because it helped me, my personal experience, to take that quantum leap to another reality. We haven't talked about all the asteroids like Pallas Athena that are related to the divine feminine, Sedna, which is related to the divine feminine. There's Vesta related to the divine feminine. There's Ceres related to the divine feminine. There's a whole bunch of asteroids which were discovered post the Greco-Roman times. And all of that is actually what I call the fifth and sixth dimensional thinking, which we're all trying to get through. But we need to break through these barriers. And part of it is 13 sign astrology, in our opinion.